My daughter's imaginary friend warned us about the real kidnapper. Mira started talking to Captain Whisper 3 days after her 5th birthday when she announced during breakfast that her new friend said we should never open the door when the mail comes at strange times. My wife Julia laughed and asked what Captain Whisper looked like, playing along with what we assumed was normal childhood imagination. Mira described him as tall and quiet, with eyes that saw everything and a voice that sounded like wind through cracks. She said he lived in the spaces between things and only talked to her when something important needed to be said. I smiled and returned to my coffee, thinking nothing of an imaginative kindergartner developing elaborate fantasy companions. Children her age often created detailed imaginary worlds, and Mira had always been creative with stories and make-believe scenarios. Captain Whisper seemed like a harmless addition to her imaginative play, possibly inspired by books or shows about mysterious heroes. What struck me as odd was the specific nature of his warning about mail delivery times, but I dismissed it as random child logic. The warnings continued with increasing specificity over the following week. Captain Whisper told Mira that the blue car with the dent in the door was a bad car, and we should remember its license plate. He said the man who smiled too much at the grocery store was pretending, and we should never talk to him alone. He mentioned that someone was taking pictures of our house when we weren't looking, and that we should check for footprints under Mira's bedroom window after it rained. Each warning was delivered matter-of-factly during dinner conversations or car rides, with Mira treating them as simple messages she was passing along from her invisible friend. Julia and I exchanged concerned glances, wondering if Mira was developing anxiety or if something at school had frightened her. The warnings seemed too detailed and specific for normal imaginary play, but we couldn't identify any obvious source of fear in her daily life. Mira remained cheerful and energetic, showing no signs of distress except when relaying Captain Whisper's increasingly urgent messages. I started documenting the warnings in a notebook, initially planning to show them to Mira's pediatrician during her next checkup. The list grew disturbing as patterns emerged. Captain Whisper consistently warned about specific vehicles, particular individuals, and locations around our neighborhood. He mentioned that someone watched our house between midnight and 2 in the morning on weekends. He described the smell of cigarettes near our back fence and said we should look for cigarette butts in the bushes. He warned that the nice lady who walked her dog past our house every evening was writing things down in a small notebook. He told Mira that someone had been in our garage when we were at church on Sunday morning and had touched things without moving them, obviously. Each detail was precise and factual rather than fantastical, which made the imaginary friend phenomenon increasingly unsettling. When I checked the bushes near our back fence, I found 3 cigarette butts that hadn't been there during my previous yard work session. Julia suggested we consult a child psychologist about the imaginary friend's unusual characteristics. Dr. Helena Vance specialized in childhood development and behavioral issues, and she agreed to meet with our family for an evaluation session. During the appointment, Mira drew pictures while Dr. Vance asked gentle questions about Captain Whisper and his messages. Mira explained that Captain Whisper wasn't like regular imaginary friends who played games and had adventures. He was more like a guardian who noticed things other people missed and warned about dangers before they happened. She said he could see in the dark and move through walls and knew when people were lying because their voices changed in ways most people couldn't hear. Dr. Vance watched Mira carefully, noting her calm demeanor and the detailed consistency of her descriptions. After the session, Dr. Vance pulled Julia and me aside privately. This doesn't present as a typical imaginary companion. The specificity and consistency suggest Mira might be processing real observations through the framework of an imaginary friend. Children sometimes create protective figures to help them communicate fears they don't fully understand. The implications of Dr. Vance's assessment were chilling. If Captain Whisper's warnings were based on Mira's actual observations rather than pure fantasy, then someone was surveilling our family with professional-level attention to detail. I contacted the police non-emergency line and explained the situation, feeling foolish as I described my daughter's imaginary friend's warnings. The officer who took the report was patient but skeptical, suggesting we install security cameras if we felt concerned about neighborhood activity. He took notes about the cigarette butts, the blue car, and the other specific details Mira had mentioned, but I could tell he thought I was an overprotective father with an imaginative child. He advised me to document any suspicious activity and call immediately if anything concrete happened. The conversation left me frustrated and uncertain, caught between dismissing Mira's warnings as childhood fantasy and taking them seriously as legitimate security concerns. I installed motion-activated cameras around our property that evening, mounting them to cover all entrances, the driveway, and Mira's bedroom window. And that's when things took a turn I never expected. To see the full story, click the link below or go on my channel.